I love movies. Gosh, I love movies.
We come to this place for magic.
I watch a lot of movies.
You did.
Yeah, I watch about a movie a day.
Welcome to Cinephomaniacs, a podcast by and for movie lovers. I'm Peyton.
And I'm Andrew. And today we're talking about the Odyssey.
But first, we're going to briefly discuss what other movies we've been looking forward to lately in a segment we call Added to Watch List.
We got news about new installments in 3 classic horror franchises this week. We saw the teaser trailer for Crystal Lake, the A24 Friday the 13th prequel series. And this stars Linda Cardellini as Pamela Voorhees.
We also got news that Nightmare on Elm Street will be returning with a new movie for the first time since 2010.
Both of these franchises have been buried in legal issues for more than 10 years. The last time we got a movie in either of these series was the Friday the 13th remake and the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. With Friday the 13th, there's this whole, complicated rights issue. Jason has one owner, Friday the 13th as a brand has a different owner, and I think the original film might have a different owner still. If you remember when they had a Jason house at Halloween Horror Nights last year, it was not a Friday the 13th house. It was a Jason Universe house. So it seems like with Crystal Lake, they've carved out a little sliver of the lore that they can explore further in new stories. And then on the Nightmare on Elm Street side, it seems like they figured out their legal troubles as well. They have figured out an agreement with Wes Craven's estate, and this is going to be coming out under Paramount's new label, Paramount Primal, which I guess is their new studio for low-budget horror and comedy and action genre films.
As a major Freddy fan, I am nervous for this one. The 2010 remake wasn't the best, so hopefully they can do more with this.
We'll see who they get to write it and direct it, but at this point I think I'm just excited to be getting something new in these franchises. And finally we got the first images from the Carrie miniseries coming to Amazon Prime from Mike Flanagan later this year.
And I think he's proven that he knows how to tell a Stephen King story.
Finally, we got our first look and a new date for The Batman Part 2. It's been pushed back yet again, and it's coming out in February 2028, 6 years after The Batman.
Why does this keep getting pushed back so much?
I think it's a bit of a mystery. They're pointing fingers at Matt Reeves, saying it just took him that long to finish the script, but I think if we look at the overall context, DC Studios was founded after The Batman came out. Warner Brothers has merged twice now. I think there are a lot of other factors than just them getting a script that they were happy with. But we'll trust the process. I was a fan of the first Batman. This new footage we got is just a single shot. It's basically a camera test of Robert Pattinson in the bat suit. Matt Reeves is returning as director, and this time around we've got a new cinematographer, Eric Messerschmidt. The cinematographer on the first Batman was Greg Fraser, who couldn't return from this one because he's currently filming the 4 Beatles biopics with Sam Mendes. Roger Deakins turned down the Beatles biopics, so Greg Fraser went to that project, and it kind of created a ripple effect from there. We have him being replaced on the Batman Part 2 as cinematographer, and then Dan Lawson is taking over on Dune Part 3. And I've got to say, Greg, everyone's looking at the footage from Dune Part 3 and even this camera test from the Batman Part 2. They're kind of saying these guys are outdoing you. Those Beatles movies must look great.
Also, Robert Pattinson skipped Taylor Swift's wedding to film the Batman Part 2, so it better live up to the first one. The first one was so good, and I love it being a sneak Halloween movie.
That's true. It does start on Halloween, doesn't it? Robert Pattinson is a very busy man. In fact, we're going to be talking about him more later in this episode.
This next section is something we call Removed from Watch List, where each week we try to chip away at just a few of the movies Andrew wants to watch on Letterboxd. What's that at right now, Andrew?
56,671.
Okay, we've definitely gone down a bit, because I know we were in the 57,000s last time, so good job.
I try to remove about 100 a day.
That's crazy. We just got the chance to see Guillermo del Toro's The Devil's Backbone at the Enzian, and I actually learned ahead of this screening that this is sort of a brother movie to Pan's Labyrinth, which would be the sister film, of course. And that makes so much sense after watching it. I can see a lot of similarities thematically, aesthetically. Pan's Labyrinth is much more of a fairy tale, but I think they're both magical, incredible stories, and it was such a treat to get to see this on 35 millimeter, no less. I think it's sick that anti-fascism has been a staple of Guillermo del Toro movies.
This is the first movie that the Enzian showed on their new 35mm projector system. We were fortunate enough to see their first 35mm and 70mm movie on this system this week. The print was a little worn, but I felt like it gave it a lot of texture, just made it feel tangible, and that's kind of the feeling I had about the whole movie. Del Toro has become known for these very fantastical, constructed worlds, and I think a lot of really great sets and beautiful images have come out of that. This world just felt very real. It felt like it took place on our Earth and not the Del Toro fantasy world. And you can kind of see the blueprint of the types of stories he would just go on to tell over and over. Like you said, he's dealing with anti-fascist themes with the Spanish Civil War. I think even with the characters, you can see the outlines of some of these characters he's returned to over the years, with the old mentor and the younger villain who's more evil than the ghosts are. So it was a lot of fun to return to this one, and I really enjoyed seeing it in that setting. I also want to recommend a couple of smaller movies I saw this week. One was The Mermaid. This is a Chinese film from 2016, directed by Stephen Chow, who directed Shaolin Soccer. And this is just such a weird looking, weird feeling world. It's just kind of this gonzo comedy about mermaids trying to stick it to capitalists who want to take over their home. And there are just some really absurd images in this, including a man with octopus legs cooking sushi and trying to disguise his tentacles. I also saw a more recent film that just dropped on Netflix. This is Mile End Kicks from Chandler Levac. It's a semi-autobiographical coming-of-age movie about a young music journalist played by Barbie Ferreira who's just trying to make her way as an adult and find a community in the city of Montreal. I really enjoyed Chandler Levac's first movie, appropriately called I Like Movies, and this one really left an impact on me. I felt that the main character was really well fleshed out, and I related to her deeply. So I would definitely recommend checking this one out on Netflix.
Andrew said that this movie has anti-Toronto sentiment, which is interesting because one of the executive producers is Matt Johnson, who we love here at Cinephomaniacs. We also watched another movie with Barbie Ferreira recently, Faces of Death. This is one we sadly didn't get to catch in theaters, actually because we were so busy with the Florida Film Festival at the time it was out. It got a very limited release near us, unfortunately. And finally, it was streaming for free. So we went ahead and checked it out. And it was fun. I think it had some fun kills. Good homages to the original movie. Thankfully, no animal violence like there is in that one. Or at least very minimal. It kind of shows clips of what happens in the original film. I thought it was fine overall. I think if you're looking for just a horror movie to throw on, either by yourself or with your friends, it's not a waste of time, certainly. It wasn't my favorite thing I've seen recently.
We talked about renting this for $20 for the Charlie XCX episode, and I'm kind of glad we didn't because she's only in this for about 2 minutes.
Yeah, her impact on this one isn't huge. Decray Montgomery's is, though. He, I don't think it's a spoiler to say, is the killer in this one. They reveal that in the trailer. I think he really had a lot of fun with it. He hammed it up a lot, and I think the movie is all the better for it. Also, he looks so much like Leo Woodall to me. They could be brothers. Please sound off if you agree. I've heard that apparently they don't, but I see the similarity so hard.
I don't see it, frankly. Montgomery was a joy to watch in this. He really sinks his teeth into some of those monologues he has. I really liked how he flipped a switch into this nerdy persona whenever he was out in public or had to deal with the cops. It was such a funny caricature, and it stood in contrast to this sort of cold, psychopathic killer that he's playing in the rest of the movie. The word I used in my review of this movie was efficient. I think it is very good at telling the story it's telling in a short and effective way. There are a lot of scenes that I found to be compelling horror action scenes in this movie. I do wish they went a little farther with the gore here. This is not a straight up remake of Faces of Death. It's more of a commentary on the way that we process violence in the modern day through social media, using the original film, which exists in this, as a commentary on that. Montgomery's serial killer character is recreating scenes from the Faces of Death that were faked there, but here he's doing them for real. And Barbie Ferreira is a TikTok moderator. It's not actually called TikTok, but in every way but name TikTok, who comes across these videos and decides to seek him out and try to save people. It was a little hard for me to buy Barbie Ferreira in this role, whereas with Myland Kicks, I felt that she was very well suited for the role. I believed her in it, saw myself in it. Couldn't really buy her as the final girl, couldn't really buy her as the badass who could take down the killer here. I think between Faces of Death, Cam, and How to Blow Up a Pipeline, Daniel Goldhaber has created a really interesting trio of films. He's kind of sneakily becoming one of the directors to watch for me.
Well, it's all right.
It's showtime, folks.
And now, for the reason you're all really here, let's talk Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey.
This has been one of the most anticipated movies this year. It has a massive cast, they shot in real locations all over the world, and it's the first narrative feature shot entirely on IMAX.
I wouldn't even say this year. Over a year ago, people were buying tickets for this. This has been sold out for well over 365 days at this point, for weeks.
We saw one battle after another in 70mm IMAX last year. They gave us just a few crumbs of the Odyssey before one battle after another, and then put the tickets on sale a year in advance. We actually had some problems in that screening, and they ended up pausing the movie a few minutes in, and I could hear the guys next to us looking up the Odyssey and just commenting on how many actors were in the cast, talking about how John Leguizamo was in it, but they kept saying John Leguizamo.
I remember that.
Christopher Nolan has been a proponent of IMAX for a big chunk of his career. When they used it in the action scenes of The Dark Knight, that was the first time it had ever been used in a narrative movie. Up to that point, IMAX was always used in documentaries. My first experience seeing an IMAX movie was actually an underwater documentary.
I couldn't tell you what my first experience with IMAX was, to be honest, but I definitely remember seeing The Dark Knight in theaters. Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy is absolutely what got me into superheroes and superhero movies. Cillian Murphy as the Scarecrow was everything to me as a child, and remains so to this day. Honestly, I think that's such inspired casting, and just love all of those movies dearly. So he hooked me when I was young.
The Dark Knight trilogy was huge for me. I had the Dark Knight poster on my wall for years. I think, like every kid our age, the movie just blew me away. It was one of those movies that I just walked away with my jaw on the floor. I was in awe that something like this could be done in a movie. And that was kind of my experience with Nolan for a while. Between that trilogy, The Prestige, Inception, I was a Nolan fanboy for a long time.
Until PTA adopted you.
Yes, until I saw the light. I liked things about Dunkirk. I don't think I quite jumped on the bandwagon of it being his best movie. Tenet, I felt was pretty messy.
I love Tenet. Tenet is probably my favorite Nolan movie. Dunkirk is up there for me as well, but I think Tenet is just a wild ride. I couldn't explain it to you, but I love watching it.
It is a wild ride. And then I think, like everyone, I just jumped back on the bandwagon with Oppenheimer, which I thought was excellent.
Oppenheimer is a perfect film.
So I came into the Odyssey with, I'd say, a healthy amount of expectation for it.
I, funnily enough, wasn't super excited to watch this. I know it makes me a little baby, but honestly, I was scared by in the trailer. Again, so sorry if this spoils anything for anyone, but in the trailer, it shows Odysseus picking up and adopting a puppy, and then also saying goodbye to an old dog that's obviously that same puppy. And I didn't really want to go through that emotional journey for a film that I didn't necessarily think would resonate with me that much. I do really enjoy Greek mythology stories, especially thinking the Percy Jackson books and movies. However, I don't know, just something about the promotional material for this wasn't really grabbing me. So my expectations for this going in were probably lower than yours, not in that I thought it would be a bad movie. I didn't think for a second Christopher Nolan would make something that wasn't good. I just didn't know that I would enjoy it, but I was incorrect.
This shows the difference in how we watch movies, because I would not have known there was a dog in this movie until you mentioned it. It seemed like I had to practically drag you kicking and screaming to this.
That feels a little strong.
And then we walked out and you were so high on it, and I was like, yeah, it was pretty good.
It was excellent.
Well, let's get into it. This stars a very large A-list cast, including Matt Damon, Tom Holland, Anne Hathaway, Robert Pattinson, Lupita Nyong'o, Samantha Morton, John Leguizamo, Zendaya, and Charlize Theron, just to get started. And I'm not even scratching the surface.
Heavy hitter after heavy hitter here.
This movie starts near the end of the story and then flashes back throughout the movie. It wouldn't be a Nolan story if it wasn't playing with time and chronology in some way. Matt Damon's character is Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, and he has been missing for 20 years, leaving Penelope, his wife, played by Anne Hathaway, to kind of rule over the kingdom in everything but name.
This sucks for her. Essentially, what has been happening every night for, I'm assuming most of the time Odysseus has been gone, is that seemingly hundreds of suitors have invaded the castle and are eating her food, drinking her wine, taking up space in her palace, all in the hopes of winning her hand in marriage. But she stays in this sort of backroom thing away from them all. She says that she will choose a suitor when she finishes this weaving project she's working on. However, unbeknownst to these suitors, she undoes the project a little bit each night because she is still very much in love with Odysseus and believes that he will come back. So she is putting this off as much as she can.
They practice a principle called Zeus's Law, and we'll hear about this a lot more throughout the movie.
Yeah, take a shot every time they say Zeus's Law.
This is the idea of do unto others as you would have them do unto you, because you never know when a random person you encounter could be a god in disguise.
Not the best reason to be nice to someone, but at least they're taught to be gracious.
In practice, especially when you're a leader, this means you don't turn away beggars or guests. You must feed them, house them, and provide them with hospitality. In the case of Penelope, the suitors are very much taking advantage of this, milking it for all it's worth. They're pretty much holding her in a non-violent hostage scenario.
And I can't imagine how bad it smells in this meal hall. Oh my god.
Her most aggressive suitor is Antonius, who's pretty much the villain of this movie. He's played by Robert Pattinson.
Robert Pattinson is at his best when he's a conniving, slimy little twerp. And that's absolutely what he is here.
And then we have Tom Holland as Telemachus, Penelope and Odysseus' son, who's coming of age. He wants to take the throne, which would put an end to all these suitors trying to marry Penelope and become king. But first he wants to be absolutely certain that his dad is really dead. So this sends him on a journey and also leads to a series of discoveries that kind of frame the story. Meanwhile, we see where Odysseus is in present day, and he is stuck on an island with Calypso, played by Charlize Theron, and he does not remember much. He's trying to recall who he is, how he got here.
And Charlize Theron honestly really has nothing to do with this character. I mean, she's great, don't get me wrong. But she looks amazing. I would love to be here with her. Not the worst place to be stuck, certainly.
Good on her for getting a paycheck and a vacation, I guess. So with these pieces in place, then we jump back to the start of the story and, not entirely in chronological order, get more and more information about how we got here. 20 years ago, Odysseus is the king. He is beloved. He and Penelope are in a happy marriage and they've just had their son. And this is when he's called on by the king Agamemnon to aid him in the war against the Trojans.
Agamemnon, who's almost secretly played by Benny Safdie. I don't think we ever even see his face. But honestly, for the character, I think that is pretty effective because we don't get too much from Agamemnon, but he is very imposing. And what we do get is pretty powerful. I would love to get more insight into his story. Nolan, please, the Agamemnon movie next.
He has this huge black armor. He's the only one who looks like this. His armor is bigger than everyone else's. His helmet goes taller. He has this golden spine hanging off the back of his helmet. He's very much trying to be imposing, it seems.
We also learned that he sacrificed his daughter so that the gods would help them win this war.
Agamemnon's brother is Menelaus, who is married to Helen of Troy, and she has been captured. At least they say she's been captured, but they kind of imply she actually just ran off with a lover because she didn't want to be married to him. Regardless, Agamemnon has used this as an excuse to achieve his political aims and launch a war into Troy. Odysseus honors his duty and assembles an army out of his people. They draw lots to see which of the men will be selected to serve, because he knows that this war will take years and years and that many of them will not return. So doing it randomly seems to be the fairest way to him.
I follow that logic.
We see a young version of Antinous who draws the lot that he should enter the war, but bribes a smaller boy to take his place instead, and sort of covers this up by saying that Odysseus asked him to stay and watch over his son while he was away. The younger boy is Sinon, who will be played by Elliot Page as an adult, and we'll see more of later. The war drags on for 10 years. We don't see too much of it. That's the story of a different poem. And they're basically at a stalemate on the beach until Odysseus comes up with a plan to pretend to surrender, leaving behind a large wooden horse as a token to the city of Troy. In reality, they're actually all hiding inside of the horse, so that once it's dragged into the city, they can come out, take the city, and open the gates and allow Agamemnon's army to come in.
The scale of this scene, or scenes, as Andrew said, it's presented throughout the movie because it's not in chronological order, but the scale of this is just astronomical. Oh my God. It really feels like you're there and have been dropped into the middle of this war zone. I think the Trojan horse itself looks huge, and you really feel what it would be like for these men to have been trapped in there for days. Some of them drown because they're right on the shoreline while they wait for the people of Troy to let their guard down enough to bring it inside. Once they finally do get in and start to kind of trickle out, they're wobbling, walking weird because their legs, some of their muscles are asleep because they've been trapped inside this horse for days. Once they're able to take control and let in Agamemnon and his army and all hell breaks loose, it's just insane.
It's such a memorable version of the Trojan horse. I didn't think that they could do it better than Troy did almost 20 years ago, but they really do make it look so brutal and so uncomfortable. The idea of the Trojan horse seems so silly on its face, but they fully commit to showing what a realistic version of this would look like, and it's not pretty.
They do the same with the storming of the city, I feel. There are obviously civilians throughout that are getting taken and killed, and that's not taken lightly at any point in the film.
And to sell their deception, they leave one man behind, Sinan, and they make sure that even he is not aware of their plan. So Sinan is actually killed in all of this, but that ensures that the Trojans buy it. So Odysseus' plan makes him famous and wins them the war.
This is when he and his remaining soldiers begin their epic journey home.
Yes, you could say that Odysseus goes on a very long trip.
From here on out, it's kind of a series of unfortunate events for Odysseus and his men. On the first island they stop at to look for supplies, they find the Cyclops Polyphemus when following a flock of sheep into a cave where they presume they'll find a shepherd that's a fellow human. It is not. The Cyclops eats a couple of them, but generally leaves them alone and just goes to bed when he's full, I guess. It's explained that they're almost like insects to him, so why would he pay any more attention? When night falls, Polyphemus rolls a rock in front of the cave that even altogether the soldiers cannot move. So they know that they're going to have to go on the attack if they want to make it out of here. Or go undercover as sheep, neither of which go super well for them.
To convince the Cyclops that they're sheep, they actually take out his eye. And I just felt kind of bad for the Cyclops here, because he really wasn't doing anything that bad to them. I mean, imagine if I found like a bunch of roaches in my house and just said, you know what, I'm not going to kill you guys. You can chill. There's enough space here. And then they like poke out my eye and try to kill me while I'm asleep.
As if that's not enough, once the men finally escape, Odysseus turns around and shoots the Cyclops with an arrow, angering both the Cyclops and his father Poseidon. So that's not good for these soldiers that have to get back onto their boat and go out into the sea.
I really enjoyed this Cyclops section. I think it's one of the parts of the story that maybe seems silly on the page, but just like with the Trojan horse, they execute it really well and convincingly.
Yeah, this was pretty horrific.
I've never seen a design of a Cyclops quite like this either. I think with a lot of Cyclops designs, it ends up looking just a little silly because they're taking a normal face and just putting one eye in the center. Here we have kind of a deformed face where his nose and eye are at an angle, which allows him to only have one eye, which, even though it's a deformation of a human face, does make it easier to accept as real. They're using a mix of practical techniques and special effects here. There's a 60-foot tall puppet version of the Cyclops that they had Matt Damon and the actors interacting with. And then we have a human actor who's also playing the Cyclops for the close-ups. He is the character actor Bill Irwin, who has been in a bunch of things. You might know him as Cindy Lou Who's dad. And he also voiced Tars in Interstellar.
After escaping this island, they make their way to the next one, where their luck does not get any better. They come across what looks like another adult soldier in armor, but when it turns around, it's revealed to be a child that's just also their height. So the audience kind of realizes at the same time as the soldiers, oh my god, if this is what the kids look like, how big are these adults gonna be? The kid, in a moment I honestly found pretty funny, just screams a really, really high-pitched scream and runs off into the distance. And then we see just how big the adults are, and I would go as far as to consider them giants, I think.
Yeah, they look to be about 10 feet tall, maybe. And supposedly this was another scene that a lot of it was captured in camera. They had 7-foot tall doubles playing the giants and 5-foot tall doubles playing Matt Damon and his men, and just use force perspective to make them seem even taller.
Odysseus and crew turn around and run, booking it out of there as fast as possible, rightfully so. A couple of their men are killed here, but most of them make it back to the ship, and they head out to find the next island. Maybe the third time will be the charm.
There's not really so much a plot to this movie as there is just them going from island to island trying to get back and having like little mini stories on each island.
When they get to the third one, The rest of the soldiers want Odysseus to stay behind because they feel like he's kind of the cause of all of the strife they're now facing after shooting the Cyclops with the arrow and angering Poseidon. So they make their way up to the top of the island where they encounter Circe, who, unbeknownst to them, is a witch. And along the way, they're coming across animals like a lion, a tiger, a cheetah, I think, other giant cats who almost look at them like they're scared or with pity. None of them make any sort of move to attack. So you know something is up immediately. And Circe, upon seeing all of these soldiers appearing on her property, runs away like she's scared, but the soldiers convince her that they're just there for food and to seek refuge, which she is then more than happy to offer them.
She tells them to leave their armor and their weapons outside, and when they lay them down, there's already armor there, which maybe should have tipped them off a little bit.
It would have tipped Odysseus off, I'll tell you that.
They go inside and she feeds them stew, and they're just chowing down on it. Like, they're disgusting, but to be fair, they haven't eaten in a while.
It really reminded me of the scene from Spirited Away with the parents, where they're eating at the beginning of the movie.
Yes, and foreshadowing.
Yes.
Because as they're eating, Circe actually goes around the table and starts melding their faces, their bodies, until they become pigs, which is what she sees them as anyways, the way they barged into her home and started taking everything like it was theirs.
This was so cool. Oh my God. I don't know how they did this, but it looked so practical and just real. It looked like she was really moving their faces around like modeling clay. This was one of the coolest transformation sequences I've ever seen.
And Samantha Morton, who's playing Circe here, is just killing it. She is absolutely chewing the scenery here. I think if Isabella Rossellini can get an Oscar nomination for like 5 minutes of screen time, I don't see why Samantha Morton shouldn't.
It would be well deserved for this. This was awesome. One of my favorite stretches of the movie.
It really is such a cool sequence. It's like a mini horror movie in the middle of the movie.
This and the Cyclops scene were. It really was fun. It doesn't take long for Odysseus to realize that something is up. So he heads after his men and also pretty quickly runs into Circe's house.
Odysseus spots all the clues and eventually figures out what she's done to his men. He grabs a bird that she seems fond of and threatens to crush it, and she pleads with him not to, so he compels her to turn them back into men.
He also compels her to tell him where they should head next on their journey so that they'll be able to find their way home.
She tells him he needs to go to Tiresias to get a prophecy, which will tell them where to go. Unfortunately, the only place they can get to Tiresias is in the underworld because he's dead.
This was a very cool sequence, but honestly just felt like them landing on another beach. It really wasn't giving underworld to me, if I'm being completely honest. But Elliot Page really got to shine here, and we got more Benny Safdie as Agamemnon, who really had so much aura. And the way that the dead rise out of the ground in this sequence is very fun.
It's a really interesting visual. It's a way I haven't seen before of making an idea like rising from the dead look practical. It's a very cool and kind of creepy visual of them just crawling out of the black sand. Elliot Page gets a nice scene here as Sinan confronts Odysseus about letting him die. He returns the lot that Antinous originally got and makes Odysseus promise to return it to him. I thought the little side story about Agamemnon was kind of interesting because they still seem kind of afraid to show Benny Safdie's whole face. Instead, we get this shot of him from behind, shirtless, where we see his kind of skinny body and like broccoli cut, which the combination of Agamemnon wearing this massive intimidating armor and then looking like that, I think could have been a little more pointed. Like, if you're gonna do that, do it all the way. They follow Tiresias' instructions and sail back through the ocean,
And once again, these guys are going through it. They really don't catch a break at all here. They come across a whirlpool, which Odysseus is successfully able to get them to skirt past by suggesting that they actually sail into it and they'll be able to come out the other side. And of course, his crew is like, no, that's crazy. We're not doing that. We're going the other way. Of course, Tiresias only told Odysseus that should they go the other way, they'll encounter a monster that will pick off 6 of the men. However, he can choose to lose 6, or they can all die when the whirlpool destroys the ship. So he chooses the 6, and despite pissing off a lot of his men with this decision, they make it through and are able to continue sailing until they realize they are about to come upon the sirens, who I'm very sad we don't get to see. To make it through this part, Odysseus has all of his men put wax in their ears so that they can't hear the siren song. However, he wants to hear what it sounds like, but of course doesn't want to die. So he has his crew tie him to the ship so that he won't be able to jump off, and has them promise that no matter what he says, they won't untie him. Fortunately for Odysseus, they keep this promise. However, unfortunately, one of his men takes the wax out of his ears because I guess he just can't resist the temptation and immediately jumps overboard. We don't see what happens to him, but we can assume it's not good.
They get to another island where they're allowed to eat anything but the cattle, and they're told that if they eat the cattle, then Poseidon will sink them when they leave.
And also that they'll piss off Helios, the sun god.
And all the men agree to this at first. The cattle are kind of annoyingly close to them. They just follow them around. Also, the wind is constantly going inward, so they can't sail out. Over time, they run out of food, and they're starving to death. Odysseus catches the men eating the cattle, trying to hide it from him.
Right after this, the wind suspiciously goes away, allowing the men to leave the island on their ship. However, very quickly, they encounter an incredibly intense storm that literally rips the ship in half. And this is the last time we see the rest of Odysseus's men. He is now floating alone on the small piece of ship that he has to lay on until he washes ashore on an island inhabited by Calypso.
Calypso feeds him lotus flowers, which cause him to forget, and she keeps him as her lover for the next 7 years.
Throughout the movie, what we're seeing of this story is Odysseus remembering what has happened to him and the family that he needs to make it back to at the behest of Calypso.
After hearing his story, Calypso takes pity on him and decides to let him leave. She allows him to build a raft out of the broken ship parts and sail away. Somehow, miraculously, with the help of the gods, this plan works, and his raft is taken all the way back to Ithaca.
Not quite ready to reveal himself, Odysseus disguises himself as a beggar and makes his way into his city.
He's taking a lesson from Agamemnon, who returned to his city expecting a hero's welcome, but was actually murdered by the enemies he had created. So Odysseus is taking a more tactful path by not revealing himself just yet. He's greeted here by Emmaus, his old friend, who's played by John Leguizamo. And we haven't talked a whole lot about this character because he's mostly to the side of the plot, unfortunately. But John Leguizamo is incredible here. He's like this wise old blind shepherd who's sort of mentoring Tom Holland's character for a lot of the movie.
It's definitely Leguizamo like I've never seen him before.
It's like he took his role in the menu to heart and just knew that he had to milk this role for everything it was worth. When Odysseus finds Emmaus, Emmaus has just been attacked by some of the suitors who have killed his assistant as well as his dogs. So he is very beaten up and jaded in this moment. Odysseus pieces together that some of these suitors are planning to kill Telemachus by posing as priests, and he manages to get in just in time and save Telemachus.
The two then head back to the palace where, with the help of Odysseus's old dog Argos, Telemachus finally recognizes who this quote unquote old man is his father, and the two of them head back to the palace, devising a plan that will allow Odysseus to finally reveal himself to Penelope and rid the palace of all of these suitors that have taken over.
Penelope also has her own plan to get rid of the suitors, which sort of overlaps with Odysseus's in some convenient ways. Penelope poses a challenge to all her suitors. They need to repeat a party trick that Odysseus used to do. He would string a bow, which no one else was ever strong enough to string, and then shoot an arrow through 12 axes. All the men attempt to do this and fail, except Antinous, who doesn't even try and just says, "We get it, none of us are going to be Odysseus."
He tries to appeal to logic here, but thankfully no one is having it. And this is finally when Odysseus, who is still disguised as the beggar at this point, steps up and says he wants to try.
So the old beggar takes the bow and fails at first, but finally manages to string the bow and shoot the arrow right through the axes. At this moment, Penelope is locking all the suitors in there, basically planning to burn them to death, I believe.
Good for her.
But to all the suitors, Odysseus has just announced himself, and this turns into a fight where he's shooting them with arrows, they're all attacking him.
Yeah, he's not locked in there with them. They're locked in there with him.
And they're actually unarmed at this moment as a stipulation by Penelope, so he's just mowing through them.
At this point, the suitors have all revealed themselves to just be absolute pigs. Honestly, they are the ones that Cersei should have gone after. So you really are just cheering this on. And of course, you want Odysseus and Penelope to be reunited so badly at this point. I was just whooping and hollering and having the best time during this part.
Antinous gets an assist from one of his co-conspirators who manages to get them some weapons. So gets a little harder for Odysseus. He takes a couple arrows. Still, he manages to get to Antinous and return his lot to him before killing him.
In a very satisfying moment. Long coming.
All of the other suitors stand down to Odysseus, and Odysseus finally reunites with Penelope.
For a second, I thought he was going to die here. He collapses into her arms and says it's time for him to relinquish the throne, which Penelope and myself both took as him saying he was dying. But thankfully, no.
I did too. But in fact, he's not dying. He allows Telemachus to take the throne, and he and Penelope will finally leave Ithaca behind and sail into the sun, as well as sacrifice to pay tribute to all the men he's lost along the way.
Yes, he is really reckoning with all of the innocent lives that were lost in the war, both the soldiers on his side and those of Troy, soldiers and civilians, due to his idea of the Trojan horse. He really is feeling like he lit the match that is now burning down civilization and reckoning with what that means, but also hoping that Tom Holland and the other people that follow will be able to rebuild something more peaceful.
It's interesting because it's a similar ending in a lot of ways to Oppenheimer, I felt, where Odysseus's greatest achievement is also his greatest shame. He feels like he's unleashed something into the world. I don't feel like the Trojan horse and the atom bomb are quite comparable, but that's what this movie would have you believe. And it also ties into Zeus's law, because Odysseus feels deeply ashamed that he took advantage of their most sacred law to betray the people of Troy.
Well, this ending is very hopeful and a happy one for him and Penelope and Telemachus and the people of Ithaca. It is a big question, a harrowing one, and I think sticks with you long after you leave the theater.
I really enjoyed the cast of this movie. I thought the key performers, Matt Damon, Anne Hathaway, Tom Holland, were all really solid. But I actually thought that John Leguizamo and Samantha Morton were the standout in this cast. I genuinely, if they give awards attention to just small supporting roles, I feel like it should go their way next year.
I agree. They were so much fun every time they were on screen. They really added something interesting. Samantha Morton in particular had, like I said, probably my favorite scene in the movie when she's physically molding these men into pigs.
Were there any other performers you felt stood out?
Anne Hathaway really was everything to me in this. She is always strong, but this is unlike I've seen her before, or at least in a very long time. I was very moved by her portrayal of Penelope here.
And I thought Robert Pattinson was really good, just playing a slimy little weirdo. I think his not so secret is that he's a character actor at heart. He just happens to look like that, but it's really in those weird, creepy roles where he shines, not as the leading man.
Yeah, if you haven't heard his voice acting in The Boy and the Heron, please go look that up right now.
I did feel like some performances got kind of shoved to the side. For example, Mia Goth has a very small role as Anne Hathaway's, maid? Assistant?
Assistant would be the modern term for it.
Okay.
Whatever that would be during that time.
And she is betraying Anne Hathaway because she's actually Robert Pattinson's lover, but it's just really not much of a role for her. And Mia Goth is someone who's really stolen the show in other movies, but that's just not the case here.
Agreed. Always fun to see her face, but it's a nothing role.
On the flip side, I did feel that Elliot Page did a lot with a small role. It was nice to see him get his little moment.
I felt that way about Lupita Nyong'o. She has a moment with Tom Holland in particular where she really gave a powerful performance.
Lupita Nyong'o needs to make a very big impression with a very small amount of screen time. Because while this isn't the story of Helen of Troy, she does need to present the thesis of this, which is that it was not actually her fault that this war was launched in her name, that this was Agamemnon's ambition just taking advantage of the situation, and she didn't want any of this to happen. And in fact, we see that in the aftermath of the war, she's just miserable being the wife of the king. She has scars on her face, the face that launched 1,000 ships, quote unquote, and she's married to someone she doesn't want to be married to. She's lost her sister. While so many men are enjoying the spoils of this war that was launched in her name, she is just having none of it. I thought on a technical level, this movie was just outstanding. The sound design blew me away in a few spots. And I also thought Ludwig Göransson's score was really great here.
Fork found in kitchen with that one.
He's won 3 Oscars, I think, in the last 10 years, and can he go for a 4th? Let's see.
I think this movie, it feels like the last couple of years we've gotten movies that are setting records with the number of Oscar nominations they've gotten. I think this will be another example of that.
Absolutely. Even with the new Oscar for casting, I mean, look how much casting they did.
So true. Oh my God. I think that has to be almost in the bag.
If I'm being honest about my reaction at this point, I think this is a very good movie that just didn't quite leave me with that jaw on the floor, just shocked feeling that I've had about some of Nolan's movies in the past. And I think that it could really grow on me as I continue to watch it, like something like Oppenheimer. But that's just kind of where I am right now after one watch.
Because I went into this not expecting to have the best time, I really was floored by it, honestly. I loved this a lot. My jaw was kind of on the floor throughout most of it and when it was over. Nolan really hit a bullseye with this one for me.
I would still absolutely recommend this to anyone. I think that any movie today that's willing to go to these lengths to shoot practically for the most part, shoot in real locations, just do things the hard way to create a more tactile, real experiences for audiences in an age where everything is just done the cheapest, easiest way. I think that's worth supporting. And we have some incredible craftspeople in front of and behind the camera here just doing great work.
Absolutely, which is why it's wonderful to see so many people rushing to the theaters to see this because art like that is exactly what should be supported.
And I don't think we can wrap this up any better than that.
So, with that being said, thank you for joining us to talk about Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this movie. You can share them with us at cinephomaniacs@gmail.com or find us on socials.
Follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever it is you get podcasts. Be sure to like and subscribe and share with your friends. Everything helps us. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok to get fun memes related to the topic or just neat behind-the-scenes looks.
And be sure to tune in next week to talk more movies with us. Thank you so much for your time, and we can't wait to talk with you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Did you nut? Usually you nut.